In the quiet cul-de-sac of Meadowbrook Pines, where rose gardens bloomed in sync and mailboxes stood like sentinels of suburban peace, something strange had begun to fester beneath the perfection. The newly arrived homeowner, Linda Garvey, didn't know it yet, but her life was about to be shattered by someone who believed she ran the street like a military base. It started innocently enough. Or so Linda thought. She had just finished watering her potted tulips when she noticed a thick white envelope stuck under her welcome mat. No postage, no return address, just block letters. Urgent HOA violation. Linda opened the envelope, frowning. The paper inside had been typed, but not signed. It read, "Your garbage cans were visible from the street for 2 hours past pickup time. This is your first and final warning. Consider this a notice. Repeated offenses may result in serious enforcement measures." Linda looked around. No one. No cameras. No clue. Linda, late 40s, single mom, sharp but warm. What kind of serious enforcement are we talking about here? She muttered. She wasn't new to HOA drama. Her last neighborhood had a president who once fined her for painting her fence eggshell instead of Dove cream. But this was personal. She checked the HOA directory. The current board president was a woman named Karen Billings, retired schoolteacher, moved in 6 years ago, and widely known for giving speeches at meetings about preserving the purity of the neighborhood. That evening, Linda made banana bread and decided to break the ice, or test the waters. She walked up to Karen's home. Her yard, of course, was flawless. Not a blade of grass out of place. A stone gnome with a smug smile guarded the front steps. Karen opened the door with a disapproving squint. Even before Linda could speak Karen's 60s, tight bun, voice like vinegar. "You're new. That garbage can was an eyesore." Linda keeping cool. "I assumed I had until sundown." Karen. Assumption is the root of non-compliance. Linda chuckled politely and handed over the banana bread. Karen accepted it like it might be radioactive. "Karen, we're a very orderly community. Ms. Garvey, we watch out for each other. That includes enforcing the rules." Something in Karen's tone made Linda pause. "We watch out for each other" felt more like we spy on everyone. As Linda turned to leave, she noticed a small camera tucked into the hedges, pointed directly at her driveway. She didn't remember seeing that yesterday. That night, her son Josh called from the city. He'd just started a new job, a 911 dispatcher trainee. Josh, early 20s, voice upbeat. "Hey mom, how's HOA life treating you?" Linda chuckled. "Linda, well, it's no picnic. I think the president has binoculars and a citation printer." "Josh, sounds like you're living next to a Bond villain." They laughed. Linda felt reassured. She hadn't realized how much she missed talking to Josh every day. But the next morning, Linda found her gate lock broken. Her backyard garden had been trampled. A second envelope was taped to her back door. "You've been warned." There was no signature, just a red HOA stamp. Was this real enforcement? Or had Karen crossed a line? Either way, Linda wasn't going to sit quietly, not this time. Because someone had broken onto her property, and she was about to find out just how far this HOA president would go. Have you ever had a neighbor go too far? Stick around because what happens next will leave you questioning who's really in charge. Don't miss part 2. It's about to get personal. Linda stared at the envelope taped to her back door. It wasn't just some passive-aggressive HOA notice anymore. Someone had broken the lock, trespassed on her property, and left behind a threat pretending to be a warning. This wasn't about a garbage can. This was about control. She took out her phone and snapped photos of the lock, the flattened flower bed, and the note with the red HOA stamp. Then she dialed the number for the HOA board office. "Don't answer." Straight to voicemail. She left a calm, firm message. Then, just to be safe, she filed a report online with the sheriff's office for trespassing. It probably wouldn't go anywhere. But it was something. As she paced inside her kitchen, her phone rang. It was her next-door neighbor, Tina, widow, in her 50s. Kind-hearted but timid. Tina, whispering, "Hey, Linda, I didn't want to say anything before, but I saw someone near your yard last night." Linda sharp. "What time?" Tina, "Right after midnight. A figure in dark clothes. Tall. They came through the side alley with something in their hand. I thought it was just one of Karen's inspections." Inspections. Linda's spine stiffened. "Linda, Tina, that's illegal. That's not an inspection. That's stalking." Tina hesitating. Well, Karen once told me she has special authorization from the HOA to check backyards when violations are suspected. Narrator, disbelief building. Authorization. What kind of suburban vigilante nonsense was this? Linda needed answers. That afternoon, Linda took a walk down to the HOA clubhouse. It was locked, of course, but taped inside the glass door was a calendar of upcoming meetings. The next one was in 2 days. She also noticed something odd. A small sticker near the doorbell camera. It said SecTech monitored private feed. That name rang a bell. Linda pulled out her phone and Googled it. Turns out, SecTech was a private surveillance company not affiliated with any local police or municipal security. Karen must have hired them herself. Karen hadn't just appointed herself a neighborhood enforcer. She had surveillance tools, possibly access to cameras all over the street. And yet, none of it was sanctioned. That night, Linda heard footsteps again, light and quick on her back patio. She moved silently toward the window, phone in hand. The motion light clicked on, and just like that, the figure vanished into the bushes. Linda didn't hesitate. She dialed 911, dispatcherprofessional.com. 911, what's your emergency? Linda tense. Someone's on my property. Again, my gate's been broken. And this is the second night I've heard footsteps. There was a pause. Then dispatcher, familiar voice. Mom. It was Josh. Her son. Linda nearly dropped the phone. Josh, concerned now. Mom, are you okay? Do not go outside. I'm alerting the sheriff's unit now. They're en route. Linda, shaken. I think it's Karen. She's got cameras. She's watching people. JOSH. Then this isn't an HOA issue anymore. It's criminal. The squad car arrived 10 minutes later. Officers swept the yard but found no one. Linda showed them the envelope, the damage, the footage from her doorbell cam, gust, a glimpse of a tall figure in a hoodie. Officer Ramita stoic. If this is HOA sanctioned, it's wildly out of line. You did the right thing calling us. Linda exhaled. For the first time in days, she felt a flicker of safety until the officer's radio crackled, and a second report came in. Another call, same street, someone else's yard. Same shadowy figure. Karen wasn't just watching Linda, she was watching everyone. What would you do if your neighbor thought they were the law? Stay tuned, because in part 3, Linda uncovers something buried deep in the HOA's records, and it changes everything. You won't believe who's involved? The next morning, Linda stood at her kitchen window, coffee untouched. The police patrol the night before had rattled the entire block. Flashing lights, officers canvassing backyards, all in a neighborhood where the worst crime used to be. Overwatered lawns. But what gnawed at her most wasn't the figure in the dark. It was the envelope. The camera in the hedge. The fake inspection. Karen had gone too far, and Linda was done playing passive. She decided to dig. Linda opened her laptop and logged into the HOA's public website, a clunky, outdated portal that hadn't been modernized since 2011. Meeting minutes were posted monthly, but most of them were vague. She opened April's notes. Motion carried to approve discretionary neighborhood observation initiative. No details, no budget. Just a line item that made her skin crawl. She opened March. Nothing. February, just landscaping proposals. January, that's when it hit. Buried in a PDF of scanned documents labeled Board Confidential, Approved. She found it. Proposal from Karen Billings to form Residential Integrity Watch Committee, RIWC, approved unanimously. SecTech contract, signed. Budget, $3,800. Linda leaned back in her chair, stunned. Karen hadn't just made up her own rules. She'd convinced the board to approve a surveillance program cloaked under the name Residential Integrity Watch. Linda muttering. She created her own secret police. Linda wasn't done. She called Frank Maddox, the HOA treasurer, a man in his 70s with hearing aids, a war veteran who hated confrontation and mostly stayed quiet during meetings. She got his voicemail and left a message asking about the RIWC. 2 hours later, he called back. Frank gruff but kind. I didn't know what we were voting for. Linda. Karen just said it was to keep neighborhood standards high. She rushed the motion through before anyone read the fine print. Linda. Frank. She has cameras pointing into people's windows. There was a long pause. Frank. She said it was for rule enforcement. I didn't think she meant breaking into people's yards. Narrator. Frank agreed to meet Linda that evening at the park behind the clubhouse, away from cameras. While waiting for the meeting, Linda did one more thing. She called her son Josh again, but not as a dispatcher. JOSH.com. I looked up the HOA authorization. Unless they have a chartered clause with the city, and yours doesn't, they can't authorize surveillance or enter private property, not even to inspect violations. Linda tired. Good, because I'm about to blow this thing open. JOSH. Then be careful, Mom. People like Karen, they don't stop when they're challenged. They escalate. At 7:45 p.m., Linda met Frank at the park bench behind the bushes near the playground. He handed her a manila folder. Frank, Karen's pushing for something called Phase 2. Full per-lot surveillance and increased patrol authority. Linda flipped through the folder. Schematics budgets. A drafted proposal that sounded more like a police briefing than a neighborhood improvement plan. Then she saw a list of properties flagged for noncompliance investigation. Her house was number 1, followed by Tina's, and then Frank's. Linda, she's turning on her own board. FRANK, nodding. She's paranoid. Thinks we're all letting the neighborhood go to rot. They both knew what this meant. Karen wasn't just enforcing rules, she was targeting people. As they talked, Linda's phone buzzed. A text from a blocked number. It was a picture of her and Frank sitting on the bench. Right now, Karen knew they were there. How far would you go to stop someone who thinks they're above the law? In part 4, Linda takes her fight to the HOA meeting. But Karen's about to strike first, and it won't be subtle. Don't miss what happens next. The moment Linda received that photo, her and Frank, snapped from some hidden vantage point sheet, knew the fight had officially started. This wasn't just some power-hungry retiree with too much time on her hands. Karen was watching, calculating, and now, retaliating. The very next morning, Linda woke up to a loud knock at her front door. When she opened it, she found an official-looking letter, sealed in a red HOA envelope and taped to her front window with blue painter's tape. It read, due to repeated violations, including unauthorized gatherings, suspected slander of board authority, and collusion with a board member to undermine community structure, your property is now under probationary review. Effective immediately, all decorative structures must be removed. Gardening activity is suspended. You are barred from attending the next HOA meeting. Signed, the Residential Integrity Watch Committee. Linda laughed, then realized it wasn't a joke. Linda storming back inside. She banned me from the meeting. Is this a neighborhood or North Korea? She immediately called Josh. Josh furious. Mom, that's not even remotely legal. An HOA can't suspend someone's right to attend a public meeting unless it's a legal matter or safety concern. That's only through formal vote. Linda, she's trying to cut me off before I expose her. Tina stopped by half an hour later, pale and shaking. She had received the same probation notice. So had Frank. Tina quietly. I've lived here for 9 years. I've never seen anything like this. Karen put security signs in my yard. I didn't authorize them. Linda had a theory. Karen wasn't just punishing them, she was creating a paper trail phone violations to make it look like they were the problem. It was psychological warfare. Linda wasn't giving in. She marched to the clubhouse at noon. This time she wasn't going to knock. She was going to document everything. Phone in hand, she started filming. The doors were locked, as expected, but behind the glass, she spotted Karen seated at a long table inside, with 3 other board members she'd never met. One of them had a thick folder in front of him. When Karen saw Linda filming, she didn't flinch. She walked right to the window and held up a sign. Trespassing is a violation. Narrator smoldering. Linda zoomed in and kept recording. She didn't care anymore. Karen could play her little games. Linda had truth on her side, and her son was already helping behind the scenes. That night, Linda sent a full dossier, screenshots, documents from Frank, photos of the backyard damage to a local community watchdog group. By morning, she got a call from a woman named Melanie Chang, a former HOA whistleblower who now ran a blog called HOA Undercover. Melanie on the phone. Everything you're describing has a pattern. Rogue presidents creating shell committees, using fear to push people out, rewriting rules without quorum. This isn't new, but it's definitely illegal. Linda, so what now? Melanie, you show up anyway and you bring the evidence. HOA meetings are technically public. She can't ban you unless you're violent. Film everything. We'll post it. If she tries anything, she'll be on camera. HOA meeting night arrived. Linda wore a blazer and walked into the room with purpose. She had Tina beside her, Frank behind her, A few other neighbors filtered in, some nervous, some curious. Karen stood at the front. Clipboard in hand, lips tight. Got Karen projecting. We'll now begin the closed session of the board meeting. Non-members, please exit. Linda firm, according to Article 4, Section 2 of the HOA Charter. All homeowner meetings must be public unless they involve litigation or personnel matters. This one does not. Karen's eyes narrowed. Karen, you're on probation. You don't get to speak here. Linda, holding up her phone. I'm not here to speak. I'm here to watch. So is everyone else. And everything's being recorded. Narrator, rising tension. There was a silence. A crackle of tension. Someone in the back coughed, then a voice from the crowd. Neighbor, let her stay. I've got questions too. Another person chimed in. Then another. The room shifted. Karen's face went red. She slammed her clipboard onto the table and stormed into the back office. It wasn't over, but Karen had just lost control of the room. And what she did next would change everything. When the truth begins to crack through control, desperate people make dangerous moves. In Part 5, Karen retaliates in the most unthinkable way, and it sends someone to the hospital. You won't want to miss what happens next. The meeting may have ended in Linda's favor, but Karen was far from finished. 2 days later, the neighborhood woke up to chaos on Sycamore Lane. An ambulance, a sheriff's cruiser, yellow caution tape around Tina's front yard. It started around 6 a.m. when Tina stepped outside to grab her morning paper. Her foot caught on something wire. She fell hard onto her driveway, slicing her palm open and slamming her knee against the concrete. By the time paramedics arrived, she was disoriented, bleeding, and in shock. Linda got the call from a panicked neighbor over phone. Tina fell. There was wire strung between her shrubs like a trap. Linda raced over, still in pajamas. The scene looked surreal. A sheriff's deputy crouched by the hedge with gloves on, holding up the clear fishing line stretched across the path, tied at shin height between two decorative lantern poles. This wasn't a prank, it was a set-up. Officer Ramirez, serious. We're treating this as intentional. Someone knew where she'd walk. There's no innocent explanation for this. Linda's stomach dropped. Tina had just started siding with her against Karen. Now she was on a stretcher. Frank arrived shortly after, pale as a ghost. Frank, quiet. This is escalating, Linda. We're not just dealing with fines and letters anymore. Linda didn't reply. She was staring at something on the ground, a crumpled paper, damp from dew. She picked it up carefully. It was a copy of Tina's probation notice, same red stamp. Except this one had something new written in pen. Non-compliance has consequences. That evening, Linda called her son. Linda, someone booby-trapped Tina's yard. JOSH, alarm rising. Jesus, Mom, are you safe? You need to leave that neighborhood, Linda. No, I'm not running. I'm exposing her. JOSH, grim. I already looked up Karen's background. She's been sued before by a disabled vet in her last neighborhood. Forced him out over fake violations. It got buried in settlement paperwork. Now it all made sense. Karen had done this before. She wasn't just power-hungry, she was practiced. Linda turned to the one place Karen couldn't control. Public exposure. She called Melanie Chang from HOA undercover. Together, they crafted a digital article with timelines, photos, and audio snippets from the last meeting. The story went live that night under the headline, Retired Teacher Turns HOA into Surveillance, State Residents Fear for Safety After Trap Sends Woman to Hospital. Within hours, the comments section exploded. Other neighborhoods started chiming in. Karen Billings. She ran our HOA 10 years ago. She fined us $300 for wind chimes. She tried to ban Halloween decorations. Karen's pattern of bullying was no longer a secret. The next day, as Linda went to check her mailbox, she noticed something strange. Karen's house was dark, shades drawn. The usual patriotic garden flags were missing. Then she saw a car, idling in the driveway. A black SUV with tinted windows. 2 men inside. One stepped out, clipboard in hand. Narrator curious. Linda approached. Linda, are you with the HOA? The man shook his head. Man, no, ma'am. We're with County Code Enforcement. We received an anonymous tip about unpermitted surveillance installations on this property. Narrator, Linda felt a cold smile creep in. It was starting. Later that evening, Linda got a knock on her door. It wasn't Karen, it was Officer Ramirez again, holding a copy of the article printout. Officer Ramirez, mind if I come in? He stepped inside and lowered his voice. Officer Ramirez, there's more. One of the cameras behind Karen's hedge picked up audio last week. A voice, possibly Karen's, saying, "She learned like the rest of them." Linda blinked. Linda, that's a threat, Officer Ramirez. We think so too. We're now treating this as harassment and conspiracy to intimidate, but just when Linda thought the tide had turned, she found something chilling waiting for her the next morning, spray painted on her garage door. In thick red paint, "Call 911 again, see what happens." When the truth threatens power, intimidation begins. In part 6, the battle turns from legal to personal, and Linda makes a shocking discovery about Karen's past that turns everything upside down. Stick around. You won't believe what's been hiding in plain sight. The message on Linda's garage door wasn't just a warning, it was a declaration. "Call 911 again, see what happens." Spray painted in red like blood, large enough for the entire street to see. By the time Officer Ramirez arrived, half the neighborhood had gathered. Some whispered in shock. Others just stared in silence. But Karen, nowhere in sight. Linda stood beside the cruiser, arms crossed, heart thudding behind her ribs. Linda tight. She's sending threats now. In broad daylight, Officer Ramirez photographed the garage. Then he looked Linda dead in the eye. "Officer Ramirez, this is felony, vandalism, and if we link it to her or anyone working on her behalf, she's looking at serious charges." Linda didn't flinch. Linda, then let's link it, but the story was unraveling faster than even Linda expected. Later that day, Melanie from HOA, undercover, called with an update. Something big. Melanie excited. "Linda, I dug deeper into Karen's history. You're not gonna believe this. Karen Billings wasn't her real name. Her legal name was Karen Duvall. She had changed it 6 years ago, shortly after being quietly removed from a homeowner board in Nevada for financial mismanagement and suspected surveillance abuse. The case had been sealed, but Melanie had connected the dots through archived property records and a defunct HOA site that still listed her under the old name, Melanie. She ran a similar surveillance program in Nevada. The HOA was sued, settled privately. She disappeared, reappeared in your town 6 months later as Karen Billings. Linda sat at her kitchen table, stunned. This wasn't just about control. This woman had reinvented herself after being exposed, and had started all over again. Linda murmuring, "She's done this before. She'll do it again." She printed everything. Old news clippings, archive links, the lawsuit summary. Then, with shaking fingers, she forwarded the file to Officer Ramirez. She called Frank next. Frank on phone. "That explains the paranoia, the secrecy. She's hiding something deeper than power. She's hiding her past. Linda, we need to bring this to the board." Formally, but Karen struck first. That evening, HOA-wide notices were slipped under every door and mailbox. No envelopes this time, just bold, aggressive paper. To all residents, be aware that certain individuals are currently under investigation for slander, defamation, and harassment of HOA leadership. Attempts to destabilize neighborhood integrity will be met with legal recourse. Your cooperation is appreciated during this transition. RIWC Enforcement Division. There was no enforcement division. It was just Karen, printing threats. But the effect was chilling. Half the neighbors were now afraid to speak. A few began avoiding eye contact with Linda entirely. Even Tina, recovering with a knee brace, admitted she felt paranoid walking past her own living room windows. But Linda had something Karen didn't: a 911 dispatcher, son, and a growing online following. Melanie's article had already been shared over 2,000 times. Other HOA survivors started commenting. One woman from Arizona said Karen had targeted her disabled husband with daily violation notices. Another claimed she caught Karen on camera opening her mailbox. Patterns. All the same. Then something unexpected. HAPPENEDA. Knock at Linda's door. It was George Santino, one of the board members Linda hadn't spoken to yet. Retired civil engineer. Kept to himself. Quiet. George calm. "I saw the post. And I believe you." He handed Linda a USB drive. "George, last month, Karen asked me to help install software for HOA document archiving. She left her laptop open. And I made a copy of what I saw." Linda opened the drive. Emails. Draft violation notices dated weeks before the alleged offenses. Surveillance footage, timestamps before the board votes. Karen wasn't just enforcing rules. She was creating violations in advance, then staging the events. It was scripted. That night, Linda, Frank, George, and Tina met again, this time at Linda's home. Curtains drawn, doors locked. Linda, we have proof. She forged violations. She lied about board votes, and she's not who she says she is. FRANK. Then what are we waiting for? They drafted a formal motion for emergency HOA vote to remove Karen from the board permanently and refer the matter to law enforcement. The vote would take place publicly, in front of the entire neighborhood, and Karen had no idea what was coming. The mask is off, but the fight isn't over. In Part 7, Linda delivers the evidence at the emergency HOA meeting, but Karen isn't going down without a scene. What happens next shocks the entire block and brings police sirens back to Sycamore Lane. The sun sets slow and red over Meadowbrook Pines that evening, an eerie calm before the storm. The emergency HOA meeting was scheduled for 6:30 p.m. sharp in the community clubhouse, but by 6 o'clock, every parking space was taken. Neighbors stood outside in clusters, whispering, eyes darting. They weren't just curious anymore. They were divided. Inside the clubhouse, Linda stood at the front row with Frank, George, and Tina at her side. In her hands was a thick binder. Inside, the printed emails, surveillance timestamps, forged violations, and archived documents from Karen's past. Melanie from HOA Undercover was dialed in via Zoom on a tablet, quietly recording that the room buzzed with anticipation. Then the door opened. Karen Billings entered like nothing was wrong, peach-colored suit, perfect hair, clipboard in hand, and a face that held zero fear. She took her seat at the board table, directly across from Linda. It was finally time. Frank clearing throat. As acting treasurer and senior board member, I hereby call this emergency session to order under Section 3.1 of our HOA by. This session has been requested by no less than 30% of active homeowners and meets quorum. Karen's eyes flicked sideways. She said nothing. Yet, George, the agenda is simple. A motion to remove Karen Billings as HOA president, effective immediately, due to multiple bylaw violations, abuse of authority, and false identity. Karen, smiling stiffly. This is absurd. Linda stood. Linda firm. I'd like to speak as a resident. And as someone who's been targeted. Linda didn't raise her voice. She didn't accuse wildly. She opened the binder, held it up, and began to read calmly, page by page. Emails showing Karen writing up violation notices days before supposed infractions. Surveillance footage, timestamps that preceded the meetings where Karen claimed to authorize monitoring. Notes with fake board approval signatures. Then, she dropped the bomb. A scanned copy of a court settlement from Nevada. The name Karen Duval, a case involving HOA abuse, private surveillance, and intimidation tactics. The room went still. Neighbor murmuring, she's done this before. Karen, rising, cold. This is character assassination. I am Karen Billings now. That case was closed. Linda, but the behavior didn't stop. Frank raised a hand. Frank, those in favor of Karen Billings removal, please raise your hand. It started slow. George's hand, then Tina's, then two more. 5, 10, 12 hands. Frank opposed. 3 hands went up. Hesitant, but they didn't speak. Karen stared at the room as though betrayed. Her lip curled. Then she did something no one expected. She flipped her clipboard across the table, papers scattering. She stormed to the podium, snatched Linda's binder and threw it across the floor, Karen shouting, "You're all sheep. I built this place. I made this street safe. I watched out for your kids while you sat on your phones." Neighbors backed away as Karen's voice cracked. 2 stood up, shielding their children. Tina reached for her cane instinctively, and then, Linda's phone buzzed. A text from Josh. 911 call just came in. Disturbance at HOA clubhouse. Dispatching unit. Karen had lost the room. But she wasn't finished. She marched toward Linda, finger pointed, face red with fury. Karen, you don't belong here. You don't deserve this neighborhood. Linda didn't move. She didn't flinch. Linda quiet, steady. Then why are the police coming? Again, as if on cue, red and blue lights flashed through the window. Karen froze. Officer Ramirez walked in, flanked by another deputy. Officer Ramirez loud, clear. Karen Billings, please, step outside. We have further questions regarding vandalism and unauthorized surveillance. You are not under arrest at this moment, but you are being detained for questioning. Karen turned to the crowd, eyes wild, looking for support. There was none, not even from the 3 who had voted in her favor. She went quietly, but not without venom. Karen, as she's let out, you think this place will survive without me? You're all going to regret this, but it wasn't the neighborhood that would crumble, it was the mask she'd worn for 6 years. Justice has begun, but one secret remains. In Part 8, a final twist reveals Karen's real plan all along, and how one call from Linda's son changes the future of the neighborhood forever. Don't miss the ending that turns everything on its head. Karen was gone. Escorted out of the clubhouse, red-faced and silent, by Officer Ramirez and another deputy. Neighbors watched from porches, blinds, and behind car doors. It felt like a storm had passed, but Linda knew storms rarely end without an aftershock. The next morning, Linda stood in her front yard, looking at the now-scrubbed garage door. The red spray paint had taken nearly an hour to remove. A few feet away, her tulips once trampled were blooming again. But something still didn't sit right. The HOA voted later that week to dissolve the Residential Integrity Watch Committee. Cameras hidden in shrubbery were removed, and George was named interim president. Karen, however, hadn't been charged yet. She was being investigated further, according to the sheriff's office. Vandalism, forgery, surveillance abuse, and possibly tampering with public records. Still, Linda couldn't shake the feeling that she hadn't seen the full picture, until a phone call changed everything. Josh called one evening, his tone brisk but shaken. Josh, low, serious, Mom. I wasn't supposed to say anything, but I had to tell you, you were never the only target. Linda blinking. What do you mean? Josh. When your 911 call came through the night, someone was in your backyard, ran a name trace on Karen for Officer Ramirez. There were alerts already placed on her. Linda. From where? Josh, pausing. Homeland Security. Linda sat in stunned silence. Josh, she's not just some obsessive control freak. Karen Duvall had flagged multiple incidents in 3 different states. False reports to police, impersonating authority, and, there's something else. Linda. What? Josh. Back. In Nevada, she once applied to be a 911 dispatcher. Got rejected for psychological instability. But after that, she started trying to build her own network of responders. Private, unlicensed. That's when it hit Linda. Karen hadn't just wanted control over landscaping and garbage. Can visibility. She wanted a private enforcement arm, a network that looked like official authority. RIWC was never about violations. It was phase 1 of something far more dangerous: power, surveillance, fear, and a chain of command with her. At the top, Linda returned to her laptop and dug into George's USB again. Hidden in the folder marked Budget Drafts, she found a proposal labeled Phase 3 Mobile Command Pilot. Inside, a request to lease a retired sheriff's SUV, equip it with cameras, and hire neighborhood response liaisons. Karen had plans to patrol the streets herself, uniforms, a fake HOA radio code, even training sessions. She didn't want to be an HOA president. She wanted to be her own. Law enforcement. Linda forwarded the entire file to Officer Ramirez. Minutes later, he called. Officer Ramirez, urgent. This changes everything. We're forwarding this to the district attorney. Karen was charged within 48 hours. Felony impersonation of a criminal. Conspiracy. One headline read, Suburban HOA president accused of building unauthorized security force in Quiet Town. That weekend, the neighborhood came together not for a meeting or protest but for a potluck. Lawn chairs were pulled out. Kids rode bikes again. Tina showed up with her knee brace and a peach cobbler that was instantly gone. Even Frank cracked a joke, and Linda. She finally exhaled. George to Linda. I'll be honest, I didn't think you'd stick it out. Linda smiling. I almost didn't. But then Karen broke the one rule. She couldn't write herself. George. What's that? Linda, don't mess with a mother whose son works dispatch. The neighborhood was healing. Slowly, but this time, it had its eyes open. The cameras were gone, but trust, oddly enough, had returned. Linda's garage door stayed clean. The tulips kept blooming, and no one dared call her ever again. Have you ever faced someone who hid behind power to control others? If you've ever been the underdog in your own neighborhood, remember, even the biggest storms pass when the truth comes out. Share your story. And never underestimate the power of standing your ground.